don't care whether or not the U.S. military is put
they're being pounded
on
with a hammer
fellow
in broad
citizens. I mean,
daylight.
I think that's an important American principle that has its roots all the way to this country's founding, and it's also because the military serves a role to protect Americans, not to be used against Americans.
Exactly.
You keep saying used against Americans. What kind of Americans do you mean?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to yesterday's news channel, where we watch CNN so you don't have to. On last night's episode of Newsnight with Abby Phillip, Scott Jennings and Kevin O'Leary sat across from Abby and the rest of the CNN panel. And the contrast could not have been clearer. Abby tried to claim that innocent Americans are being caught up by federal agents, and then pushed the idea that Trump wants to send federal troops against American citizens. Again, Scott Jennings and Kevin O'Leary weren't buying it, and the way they handled this panel exposed just how dishonest CNN's framing really is. Anyway, let's watch Scott Jennings and Kevin O'Leary shut down these disingenuous a-holes. Let's go.
The line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I just know how to stop crime.
Are people saying, Scott, that they'd like to have a dictator if it stops crime?
Well, I think people are certainly saying that they'd like to stop crime, whatever you call it. I saw a Harvard-Harris poll today. I think 54% of Americans thought what he did in Washington, D.C. was justified. 56% of Americans think crime is a major problem in larger cities.
34% of Americans?
No, 54%.
54%.
56% thought major crime in large cities was a problem. So he seems to have some political support for this. And look, I mean, it's kind of a bread and butter political issue that gets debated all the time. And what he has done here is he's put himself on the side of I want to, do what I can do, and even if I have to test my authority to stop crime, and my political opponents are now out having a meltdown because I guess they want to support the ongoing crimes in their blue cities. So he's created a real political bright line between the two parties. However it works out legally, it's going to work for him politically.
Well, as the bright line, I think that people want crime to go down. No one wants crime in their communities. That is clear. We saw that. We've seen that over the last few months. People don't want the National Guard in their communities. That's completely different. And just as you pointed out, there are other mechanisms for the federal government to come in and to help communities. And that is the FBI and DEA, and providing grants to educational grants so that we are providing educational services to young youth to get them off the streets. There are things like that that the federal government can do. And that will actually help in the long term reduce crime. It was already reducing crime in the Biden administration. Biden didn't go out and put the National Guard everywhere, but you know what? They did have a strategy to bring down crime, and crime started to go down. And what's going to happen here is in 1 month, and once the National Guard leaves, crime will go up again. And so people don't want.
You're saying the Guard does bring down crime?
Well, right now they're arresting everyone and anyone and trying to figure out what charges they're going to bring. They're trying to arrest everyone and everyone, trying to figure out what charges they can bring against them.
Not everyone, criminals.
Well, they're not. Watch.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
He keeps talking about using the military domestically against American citizens. And we can parse all the ways that he can try to do this with this statute or that statute, but the broad principle is that the Constitution makes it much more difficult to do that for a reason, right? So why does he keep bringing that up?
Doesn't get caught up in the nuance that you're bringing forward. What they care about, we haven't even mentioned war zones like downtown San Francisco after 7 o'clock where I work, or Hollywood or Los Angeles where I work 2 months of the year. They are war zones. You can't walk outside at night, period. I don't give a damn if it's the Army, the National Guard, the FBI. I couldn't care less, and I can guarantee you 80, 90, 100% of the people there don't care either. They just want to walk outside.
So Abby says Americans that have done nothing wrong are going to get caught up. But what does caught up mean? If an officer briefly detains you because you look like a suspect, checks your info, and lets you go, is that what caught up means? See, most normal people don't mind that. I don't have a guilty conscience, neither do millions of law-abiding Americans. Now, sure, I'm sure there are instances of more serious cases where mistakes were made. Maybe someone gets accused because they hang around the wrong people. But that was a choice that they made. If your Friday nights involve robbing people or smashing windows for fun, don't call it being caught up. Call it reaping the consequences of your choices. Anyway, back to it.
People do want safety. I mean, there's no question about
Safety?
that, right?
You get
people want
beaten
safety.
to a pulp
Yeah,
in
people
broad daylight in
people want
LA.
safety and security, but I don't think it's true that people don't care whether or not the U.S. military is
Ask them when
put
they're being pounded
on
with a hammer
fellow
in
citizens.
broad
I mean, I
daylight.
think that's an important American principle that has its roots all the way to this country's founding, and it's also because the military serves a role to protect Americans, not to be used against Americans.
Exactly.
You keep saying used against Americans. What kind of Americans do you mean? The ones that are murdering us, carjacking us, raping us, terrorizing our cities? I mean, you're saying like he's creating an actual war against American citizens when what he's actually creating is a war against criminals and, by the way, illegal aliens who they are rounding
first
up
of
by
all,
the bucket load in
I
Washington.
want to let Ellie speak, but I mean, look, I'm not saying he's creating a war against American citizens, but I also think that, first of all, when you have, large amounts of armed military personnel on the streets, they're going to encounter a lot of Americans who've done nothing wrong. And those Americans have rights, as do the Americans who have done things wrong, just to be clear. But Americans who have done nothing wrong will get caught up and have gotten caught up in this. Go ahead.
Not to be overly idealistic about all this, but there's a way this can work, and I've seen it. And Soshi, I'm sure you have too in your experience at DOJ. There have been many. When I was in Jersey, we had a crime problem in Newark, and what did? We teamed up the Newark PD with the feds, and we surged into Newark, and it made a big difference. And let me just say, as a parent who's about to have 2 kids in college in the city of Chicago, I want as many uniforms out there as possible. And frankly, I don't really care where they're coming from. But both sides need to do better. I mean, there's a clip today of the mayor of Chicago, who I think very highly of, stumbling all over himself when he's asked point blank, is it better to have people on the streets, to have uniformed people on the streets? And he goes, we need housing. That's a different issue. He needs to say, yes, but we need to work with. And the feds need to cut it out. Donald Trump needs to knock it off with that sort of over-the-top rhetoric. There's a way to do this constructively. I saw it done during the Bush administration. I saw, Scott, you were part of. I saw it done during the Obama administration. All it takes is let's get past the craziness, the rhetoric. If you work together, you can do it. I've seen it. You've seen it.
And part of it is also that Democrats are waiting for Trump to come into their cities and bring the National Guard. And that is not a good solution, and it is not going to end well for anybody. If you're a Democratic mayor or a governor, what you should be doing is requesting federal, whether it is the FBI, DEA, any sort of assistance that is not the National Guard, that will actually work for your law enforcement and not,
I do think
bring in the
that
National
would
Guard.
be, sure, but Donald Trump was, just as an example, invited to come to Baltimore by the governor. He refused. He turned it down because he said that it was some kind of political trap, even though Baltimore is a great place for the president to see what's going on, because they have done some things, including gotten tougher on crime, and when it comes to juvenile crime in particular, that have worked. But Trump refuses. So, I mean, is it politics?
Well, of course politics is going on here. I mean, you said that they should be asking for federal resources, but that would be an admission that they have lost control of their cities.
That's
so
not losing
Brandon
control.
Johnson,
I mean,
No,
that would be an admission they've
the
lost
way
control.
the way
The mayor of
that
D.C. asked for federal resources too. She was transparent.
way that-
But
but
Brandon
let me-
Johnson, the
but
mayor of
let me-
Chicago, said, I don't want more police. And he even said
let
today,
me-
we don't even want to put
But
people
this is
in
what I'm
prison.
telling you.
I mean,
I'm
think
telling
about,
you that Democrats should think about potentially asking for more resources. What I'll say here
I
is
agree
that,
with you, but they won't.
But it's also not handing over the entire city to the federal government. What happens is that the mayor and the local law enforcement should be in charge, and they should have the federal law enforcement supplement and provide training as needed. It shouldn't be that the National Guard and federal law enforcement should take over a city that they do not understand, that they do not know, that the community doesn't understand. That just
And
leads
look,
to
I mean,
chaos.
when you
People
heard,
don't care
when
about
you
this.
heard,
They just
listen,
wanna be
when you
safe,
heard Stephen
period.
Miller talking about this, he didn't say we want to work with local law enforcement. He said we are supreme and we can do whatever we want. So that really tells you everything you need to know about the approach that they're
little
taking.
bomb-
That's the
Bastard.
problem. It's
A
kind of
little
being
bit.
approached in like an
Yeah.
adversarial way, as opposed to we care about this crime issue and we want to make the city safer. That's the problem.
So Abby claims Donald Trump wants to use federal troops against American citizens. No clue what that means either. Everyone knows he's talking about radical activists who riot, loot, and burn cities, not families grilling in the backyard on Saturday. Even most liberal viewers don't actually believe the military is going door to door looking for random people to harass. One thing Trump's always made clear is that federal force is to protect honest Americans from the small but destructive group that wants to tear things down. Abby frames it like law enforcement is the enemy, when in reality, they're the only line of defense between ordinary citizens and chaos. And Scott nails the bigger point. These leaders won't even request federal help because it would mean admitting failure. Their reputations matter more than protecting their citizens. That's the sickness driving this particular debate. Trump isn't using federal power against Americans. He's using it for Americans. It's got to be tense around there. I know CNN can't stand these guys. Scott Jennings lays out the facts with precision, and then Kevin O'Leary's always backing it up with the kind of blunt, no-nonsense perspective that cuts through their BS spin. Meanwhile, Abby twists vague phrases like caught up or troops against citizens to keep viewers afraid. But the truth is obvious. Trump's approach is about protecting the people who follow the law, not the ones tearing the country apart. But what do you guys think? I mean, am I right? Did Scott and Kevin expose CNN's game here? Or do you think Abby or any of the other ridiculous panelists made a point? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's it for this video. One announcement today, and that announcement is you guys are the best. Thanks so much for taking some time to watch my video. Always put God first. See you guys.